And what I came to realize is that he was so perfectly happy with other people because like smartphones would have been a wonderful thing. Being able to catch an email or a text message, still be in the loop, like still be out doing whatever it is he wanted to do, would have been perfect. I said that to him one time, and he looked at me and
But Ralph actually runs a business, but he only does the things that he knows how to do. He doesn't do anything else. I was in D.C. and we were trying to get him to do something with Venmo, but he forgot his password. Well, no, he doesn't know any passwords. So Ralph is on the phone there, I can't lie, he just do it for me. It was like, and everybody said, Dad, you know how to do this. He doesn't. No, the last time I did Venmo, y'all didn't. I just know the stuff that I know how to do. I don't want to know nothing else. I don't want to know nothing extra. It was a mess getting him started in his business. All these templates for him, and he can function, but not anything new. And he doesn't want to do anything new.
I'm pretty quickly reaching, I think, where to a certain degree, my personality is I honestly love doing new and different things. Like the worst thing in the world to me would be send me down in a cubicle, and that's what I do. I go chew through paperwork. I don't mind doing numbers. But for the most part, I kind of like to do a little different today than we do different than what I do tomorrow. So I think maybe I'll hold out a little bit with me, but I'm going to reach a point where I'm like, all right, I'm tired of keeping it up. I don't know. There's 3 more chairs.
Yeah, there is, because there was only one extra, because I was always on the end. Now there's 2.
All right, we need a picture of that. You're the whole reason.
She's moving in. She's going to be a teacher. Really?
I like people following me.
What's her name?
Extra followers. That's all right. We're just about to 20,000. We need an extra one.
You know what? I have not inquired, and probably I'm not going to push it. Here's a homeless cart for you.
All right, Daryl, hold this up. You see it. All right.
Happy birthday.
All right.
You look over. I'm just kidding.
We have a little out here. Grandson and granddaughter. Both of them's birthday. Tony worked in the office his birthday today.
So that explains a lot. Oh, wait. And my favorite.
Can you hear me? Yeah, I wanted to touch my eggs. They were everywhere.
Okay, and can you hear me?
They thought I was the mayor coming back.
Did they attack you?
No, they ran from you.
Okay.
Oh, they ran. Okay.
Thanks.
My neighbor's like, everybody in my house saw all day.
The bear in my backyard.
Damn, it's tough.
I just go in the front door now.
Melinda, you don't want to run into me.
Hey Jerry, how are you doing?
Yeah, she's on.
Excuse me, sir.
I find everybody pulls that up. Except not that. There's Harold. What?
Am I tall enough to do this?
Well, we got to see it. All right. One more. All right.
Jerry, do you know something
Looks good.
I looked at my office.
You good down here? Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the September 16th school board meeting this evening. We'll call to order with a moment of silence and first, everyone please stand. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank everybody for coming this evening. Prior to the meeting, Ms. Morgan contacted myself and administration to participate remotely by the phone. She's on there. Do I have a motion to allow Ms. Morgan to be in this meeting remotely?
I'll make that motion.
Second. Motion by Mr. Scruggs Duncan, second by Mr. Wright. Roll call, Ms. Willis.
Mr. Ayrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mr. Franzen?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Littleton?
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Morgan?
Yes.
Mrs. Scruggs Duncan?
Yes.
Mr. Wright?
Yes. Roll call.
Mr. Ayrick?
Here.
Mrs. Fitzpatrick?
Present.
Mr. Franzen?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Littleton?
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Morgan?
Here.
Mrs. Scruggs Duncan?
Here.
And Mr. Wright?
All right, we're going to start off with 25-65, instructional spotlight. Superintendent Halterman.
Yes, Chairman Littleton and members of the board, we're really pleased to bring you another instructional spotlight. This is something that we started doing last month. The school year started back up again. And this is just some good information about some of the instructional techniques used in our buildings. So today's spotlight is brought to you by a whole team from Junior Watson Elementary School. And they're gonna do a little math, but they have promised us it's not too terribly difficult for all of us. And we hope that you will enjoy that. So Courtney Crawford and Amber McNown are gonna be leading that group.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. I'm Courtney Crawford, and this is Amber McNown, and we'd like to call up some students. First of all, we want to thank Mrs. Heather Rodable for all the support she gives us with math and lots of math instruction ideas. So we're going to call some students up to join us tonight. So I've got Brielle Dane, Alexa Shiflett, and Aria McMahon. If you guys will come on up. These are some 3rd and 4th graders.
And I would like to introduce some current 2nd graders who I had the pleasure of teaching in 1st grade. Eliel Sanchez, Kaysen Benedetto, and Harris Brown.
Morgan, I think we'll put the third graders down here together. Yep. Come on down here.
They're smarter than we are.
They might teach you something. And then the first you can do right here. And this is Mr. Littleton. Okay. Stand here. All right.
Everybody can see.
Very beginning. Okay, we've got a little slideshow presentation that we're gonna go through as we do this. So tonight we're gonna do number talks and a strategy called Part Whole that we teach throughout our building to help support our math instruction.
The purpose of number talks. Number talks allow students to reason about numbers and build connections to key conceptual ideas in mathematics. This is a quote from the University of South Carolina Scholar Conference.
And number talks can help to build confidence, give a conceptual understanding of the math skill, expose students to different ways to problem solve, and increase communication skills.
Great, we're gonna begin with the first grade number talk, and we're gonna start with an activity called SPLAT. All right, so first we see some dots on the screen. This is our whole. I would like for you, past first graders, to count the dots. When you know how many dots there are, you're gonna give me this signal that shows me you're ready to share your math thinking. Okay, raise your hand if you can share how many dots there are on the screen. Harris, how many dots are on the screen?
50.
Okay. Would someone else like to share? Kason?
6.
6. There are 6 dots on the screen. That is our whole. Now we're going to splat. We're going to cover up part of the dots and figure out how many are hiding. Right, I want you to privately think about how many dots are hiding, what part is missing. When you have your answer, give me the secret signal. Okay, raise your hand if you'd like to share your math thinking. Elio?
2.
2. And how did you figure out 2 was the missing part? You just guessed.
I don't think he just
Was there any other strategy someone tried to figure out the missing part that you'd like to share? Raise your hand if you'd like to share your strategy on how you figured out the missing part. Kason?
Counted the other dots.
You counted?
And then I figured out there was 2 there.
Okay. You counted what was there and figured out what was under. Okay. You can reveal. All right. It should have showed yes, 2 was the correct answer. We're going to do one more of this splat. Count the dots. Give me the secret signal when you know how many there are. All right, raise your hand if you'd like to share. Harris, how many dots are on the screen?
8.
Okay. Would someone else like to share their math thinking? Kason?
10.
10. Give a me too signal if you also had 10. Good. All right, now we're going to splat. We're going to cover up a part. Right, now you're going to figure out what part is missing, what part is covered up with the splat. Give me the secret signal when you know the answer. All right, raise your hand if you'd like to share your math thinking. Kason?
4.
4. And how did you figure out there were 4?
Counted those. And then
You counted the dots?
4. And I forgot there's 4.
Okay, very good, thank you. All right, we're gonna do one more quick partner activity that we do in first grade to teach part whole. You can click. It's called Bears in a Cave. This is a partner game that uses manipulatives to help teach part whole. So I'm gonna pass out the pieces. Excuse me. Make sure you have 10 counters. 10 counters.
You like that, right?
10 counters. Yep, check what you can 10.
Would you agree, Mr. Wright? This is the best part of our meeting.
You got 10?
Okay. Right, first I need everyone to count. Make sure they have 10 counters. If you do not, raise your hand. Okay, it looks like we're ready. So we're gonna pretend that the cup is a cave and the counters are the bears. Okay, we're starting with our hole. How many counters do you have? You have 10? 10 is your hole. What you're gonna do is with your board member partner, you're gonna hide some of the bears in the cave. They're gonna have to close their eyes. And you're gonna hide the counters, the bears in the cave. And then they're gonna have to figure out how many bears are hiding in the cave. So go ahead.
Board members close their eyes.
Yes.
Oh, Lord.
Is that all you want to have? You have another one? Okay. Now see if she.
Oh, yeah. All right. Let them know when you're ready and they can open their eyes.
Ready? Okay.
All right.
You ready, Harris?
Here's how we're ready.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Board members, if you have it figured out, give me the secret signal.
How many's in the cave?
Oh, good job, board members.
All right, raise a quiet hand if you'd like to share your math thinking. Mr. Eric?
I think I have 5 bears in the cave.
Okay, Kason, is he correct? All right. We'll share one more. Mr. Wright?
There are 3 bears in the cave.
That's correct.
I think all the bears should live in the cave.
Right, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Jason, thank you very much.
We get the harder stuff.
Yes.
They just have faith in this church.
This is spread.
Big enough. I've seen that now.
Okay, so moving on, we continue with part for whole, just a little bit bigger numbers, a little bit more in-depth concept. So I'm gonna have with I have a third and some fourth graders. Would one of you guys like to read our word problem for us? Rael, you wanna read it? Okay, Rael's gonna read for us, and everybody just follow with her.
Huntington sold 324 cougar shirts for the game on Friday. 118 of these shirts were light blue, the rest was dark blue. How many were dark blue?
Good, and in third grade, we always read our problems more than one time. So Ari, would you read that one more time for us? And while she's reading, I want you to think about what you noticed.
A store in Covington sold 324 cougar shirts for the game on Friday. 118 of the shirts were light blue. The rest were dark blue. How many were dark blue?
Okay, so now let's take a minute before we solve it and think about what we notice. So can anybody raise your hand when you know what we're trying to figure out? What are we trying to figure out in that word problem? Raise your hand when you think you know, or give me a thumbs up. What are we trying to figure out, Brielle?
324.
Okay. Okay, so you think we're going to subtract, okay? And what are we trying to figure out? What? Go ahead.
The other number to make 324.
Good. What's the other number to make 324? And that's going to be the number of what? Alexa, can you help me? What are we looking for? The number of what? You know? You're a little nervous. Brielle, what is it? Dark blue t-shirts. Good. And you already told me some things that you noticed. There were 324 shirts sold in total, right? And then how many of them, Ari, how many of them were light blue?
118.
118. Okay, so go ahead with your number and draw your part whole. Can you guys show them how you draw a part whole? You have to do it.
We do things the old
The old way. We're also going to do the old way in a minute, so you can still do the old way. Alexa, can you tell us where 324 would go? That would go in the hole. Good. So everybody put 324 up there in your hole. Good. And then where would 118 go, Alexa? In the what? In a part. So go ahead and put 118 in the other part. Okay, so when we have a hole and when we have a part, how do we figure out the other part? Raise your hand if you know. Aria?
We stack numbers.
We do stack them, and what are we gonna do once we stack them?
Subtract.
We're gonna subtract them, right? Okay, so you have place value blocks. If you want to build the model of 324 and subtract 118, or Ms. Gross, if you want to do it the regular old school way, you may do that. Okay, yep. All right, so I'll give you guys a minute to solve it with your school board member.
Somebody's on that big. 100? Right. Okay, that makes 200. Right. We need to move stuff, we should move it out of the way. 300.
They're all hundreds. Green and blue.
320.
Okay, so now you're gonna step away. 118.
I think you got some good day off for coming all the way down here.
Yeah, you're gonna break it in half. Tell him what to do.
10.
That would be 20.
Yes. Here's your real life election.
That would be 30.
She doesn't have any. What do you put? Just yours. How many yellow ones are there?
You can Steve ask these kids to help you in budget time. We take 18 away.
Leave them in the cave, and then they won't go get our trash.
Take that many away.
Sometimes they
Oh, that's gross. Yeah, fairies kind of like snake, but it's crazy. Do you eat the fat one?
Yeah,
Eat the
take
snake?
your 10 away.
Yeah, well, you might like bear meat.
Very good. You did all
that sounds disgusting.
Does it? What, do you like to eat meat? What kind of meat do you like?
Alright, so let's see.
I like bacon.
What's all
If
that?
I bacon, then I want to have eggs. And something else that I do. Or not that. I don't know what it is.
How many you got left? 200. And 1, 2, 3, 6. So that is 200 and what? Okay, I think most of them are done. So raise your hand if you can tell me how many dark blue shirts there were. Who can tell me? Rio? 206. And I think all of you ended up with that, didn't you? Yes. And if you can change it. So we did our part whole. You go ahead. Our total was 324. One part was 118. And you guys, one way you could solve that would be place value blocks, or the old school way, the standard algorithm. And the part would be 206. Now, my students have learned about inverse operations and that addition, subtraction are related. Can any of you tell me an addition fact using those three numbers? All right, Brielle, go. Okay. Tell me addition fact.
206 plus 180 equals 300.
Good job. And we worked on creating word problems with those last year and continuing with that part-whole strategy. So that's just kind of how part-whole goes from first grade to third graders. So, thank you all. Board members, you did great. Thank you. Can y'all help open up there?
Well, I'm sure this is the best part of our entire meeting.
It should be. They're fabulous.
Get started. Thank you so much for coming. You can hang out here. Apology. You stay here, hang out there.
We put our cave and bears there.
Oh, you know you're allowed to.
Okay, thank you.
You guys can bring yourself and I'll meet you in the back. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Good luck with your homework.
I have one.
You do?
Brielle,
But if you have one, yes. It's called kids
behalf of Utilize Elementary, we would like to thank our students for participating tonight. We do have a bag and a little few gifts
follow him if you want.
in the bag. Mrs. Tickner has your
right
bag
down there.
to say thank you to our students. Thank you card. And to our teachers that are wonderful, Mrs. Crawford and Mrs. McDown, we have their gifts as well. Thank you.
I know we're also appreciative of that presentation. Thank you, Junior Watson.
Yes, thank you very much. We do greatly appreciate it. We're getting ready to get into the right part of the meeting, so if anyone wants to leave, you're more than welcome to. I know some kids have to hit the bed, my son.
Some of them go.
I gotta get the bed. But you're more than welcome to stay. Thank you very much.
Everybody's math skills feeling good?
Do what?
Your math skills good?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
You still there, Danielle? Good deal, thank you. All right, we're gonna move on to 25-66, consent agenda. This is an action item. We have the minutes of our last August 5th meeting, special call meeting August 19th, regular, and review of the bills, which I have reviewed. If anyone else would like to see them, they're right here. Consider approval of CMS students to Richmond and Williamsburg on 10/25 and 10/26, or through 10/26. Consider approval of HS cross country to Williamsburg 10/19 to 10/20. Consider approval of HS seniors to Williamsburg 10/19 through 10/20. The students are not on an overnight trip, but return after midnight. Any questions or a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I make a motion we approve.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Do we have a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Aaron?
Yes.
Mrs. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mr. Franson?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Littleton?
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Morgan?
Yes.
Mrs. Scruggs Duncan?
Yes.
And Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Next item, 25-67, informational items. This is cafeteria report, capital improvements and operation maintenance update, budget report, and division operations updates, and board development materials. Do we have anything else, Alderman?
Certainly happy to entertain any questions about those items. There are a number of instructional items, a couple of updates on different grants and just different division procedures. And perhaps meaningfully, there is a cell phone and related technology update on there. We are still awaiting some more information from the state. I think everyone is familiar with the governor's executive order from this summer, but we don't have all the updates yet that we're expecting in the middle of September.
Thank you, Ms. Alderman. Is there any question on those informational items from the board? If not, we'll move on to 25-68, calendar information. September 19th, VSBA Legislative AXP Conference. September 23rd, work session, board development. October 14th is a holiday. All personnel will be out of office and the buildings will be closed. October 21st is our regular meeting, and November 20th through 22nd is VSBA Annual Convention in Williamsburg. Anybody have any questions about the calendar items? If not, we'll move on to budget and finance. This is 25-69, approval of budget development calendar has designation of 6 p.m. January 21, 2025 as date. This is for public hearing on the 25th, for the 25-26 budget. This is an action item. Observer, thank you very much.
Good evening, Chairman Wilson, board members. Yeah, we're just presenting for your approval tonight the draft board calendar, budget calendar, that sets the date of January 21st for the public hearing on the budget. Any questions about that calendar?
I'm just saying. Anyone want to put out a motion for that hearing? So moved. Thank you, Mr. Wright. Do we have a second for that hearing?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Eric. Roll call, Ms. Willis.
Mr. Eric.
Yes.
Mrs. Fitzpatrick.
Yes.
Mr. Franklin.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Littleton.
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Morgan.
Yes.
Mrs. Scruggs Duncan.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Wright.
Yes. All right, this goes on. Thank you, Ms. Irvin. Instruction reports and recommendations, 25-70. Report from Jackson River Governor School. This is for information.
Yes, and Mr. Graham's gonna be coming forward with that report, but he was waiting in the hallway due to some space constraints there.
I understand.
I'm on.
Yes, sir, Mr. Graham. Thank you very much. Governor School.
Well, I'm ill prepared. I was having a nice chat with our sheriff, and fortunately, he chose not to take me with him. This is nothing you need for tonight, but it's something you can take with you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
I'll have something for you tomorrow. Oops, sorry. Chairman Wolfman, Vice Chairman Franson, Mr. President, Ms. Fitzpatrick, Mr. Eric, Mr. Wright, Ms. Halter, Ms. Steve Johnson, and Bruce. Thank you for having me again tonight. I get to do this annually with you, and it's an opportunity for me to talk about something that I'm very in love with and very proud of. I'm going to do things a little differently tonight. Normally, I don't speak with notes. And normally, when I talk to you about the governor's school in the past, I've talked about structure and process and how it works and who's involved and all that. But tonight, I'm going to talk a little bit about some changes we've made since I've been with you last. I'm going to highlight some of our student accomplishments, and I have brought a student along to give you a student perspective. Of course, you know we're one of 19 academic year governor schools in the state of Virginia. We serve Alleghany Highlands School Division, Bath County Schools, Bolivar County Schools, and Buena Vista City Schools, and it is a partnership with Mountain Gateway Community College. This governor's school operates with special state funding. Currently, the only contribution to the school divisions is to pay student tuition. All the other costs are covered by the special state funding for governor's schools. So, changes that we made since I spoke with you last. We have now increased the student credits to 41. So our students earn 41 college credits coming to us mornings for 2 years in their junior and senior year. We've added a class in student success skills to our first year curriculum. We actually teach it in the first 9 weeks of school. It's a 1-credit class. It is a community college class, and it is focused on providing students the knowledge and skills to be successful in college. We've revised our student schedule to add 2 1-hour tutoring sessions to our first year student schedule in the first year. And it is 2 1-hour sessions per week. And it's taught by their actual class teachers so that they just have a time where they can deal with issues they're having with that particular class. We didn't have that before, and I think it's part of the reason why our students struggle in first year sometimes. We've changed our technology class to be totally virtual. So we now have 1 class that they will experience total virtual as a governor's school student. Everything else will be in person. We've moved our research classes from first to second year. That is an advantage to the student because
they have the advantage of having completed another science class at the college level, and they've completed their statistics course by the time they start research. And we're on a 3-year replacement cycle with our laptops for our students. And this year we replaced those, and we were fortunate to get state-of-the-art touchscreen Hewlett-Packard laptops for our students, and they do love it. So those are the changes that we made since I last spoke. So, any questions about that? Here comes the reading part. I thought about what I would talk about tonight, and I remembered that at our award ceremony in June, I summarized the year for the participants of that ceremony, and I thought that would be good information for you. So I'm going to summarize some facts or statistics about last year's first and second year students. 78% of our students had a GPA higher than 3.0 in their JRGS classes. 50% had a GPA higher than 3.5, and 39% had a 4.0 GPA. And that's in classes that are among the most challenging that the community college offers. 100% of our first year completers earned a career studies certificate from Mountain Gateway Community College, and most of them actually participated in the graduation. 100% of our first year completers successfully completed the Cisco Networking Academy Introduction to Cybersecurity course and received that certification at graduation. Almost half of our graduates were ranked either first or second in the class of 2024 at their home school. Over 1/5 of our graduates had a 4.0 GPA in all of our governor's school courses over their 2 years. 44% of our graduates are members of Phi Theta Kappa Honor Society, and that's the National Honor Society for 2-year colleges. And 89% of our 2024 graduates also earned an associate degree from Mountain Gateway Community College. That's an outstanding accomplishment. In order to do that, they need to earn only 25 additional credits beyond governor's school. And those credits are available mostly at dual enrollment at their high school. I think one student told me they had to take one online course over the summer, and everything else they got dual enrollment. So we're seeing more of that. So what happens to our students after they graduate? We'll just kind of tell you the last 2 or 3 years of graduates, where they're at, what they're majoring in. For the current year graduates, or last year graduates, Christopher Newport University majoring in computer science. Christopher Newport University majoring in applied math. Coastal Carolina University majoring in marine science. Washington and Lee University majoring in political science. University of Virginia majoring in biology and neuroscience. Shenandoah University majoring in music composition. William and Mary majoring in government. Princeton University majoring in political science. Utah State University majoring in mechanical and aerospace engineering. Previous couple of years, Davidson College majoring in history. University of Virginia majoring in computer science. Virginia Military Institute majoring in electrical and computer engineering. Everett University majoring in history. Mountain Gateway Community College majoring in general studies. Virginia Tech majoring in English. Virginia Tech majoring in engineering. Mountain Gateway Community College majoring in nursing. James Madison University majoring in music education. Virginia Tech majoring in computer engineering. University of Virginia majoring in psychology. James Madison University majoring in music composition. University of Virginia, majoring in history and human biology. Virginia Commonwealth University, majoring in mathematics. Virginia Tech, majoring in engineering and computer science. Ferrum College, majoring in biology. University of Virginia, majoring in biochemistry and pre-med. Radford University, majoring in interior design. Bridgewater College, majoring in history. University of Virginia, majoring in finance. Virginia Tech, majoring in computer science. Virginia Tech, majoring in criminology, psychology, and sociology. University of Virginia, majoring in psychology and political science. So those are where your students are going after they leave Jackson River Governor's School. So this is more of an update than a summary. So if you have any questions about any aspects of the Governor's School. Well, I'd like to introduce to you Mr. James Ross, who is a student at Jackson River Governor's School. He's starting his second year. He was an award-winning student last year. He is also very active in sports. And more important than all that, he's a fine young man. So, Mr. Ross.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you guys for having me. Like Mr. Graham said, I am a student of the Governor's School. Today I just wanted to go over some of my experiences and kind of give you guys a student view of what Governor's School is like. There are many benefits to it. First of all, I'd like to say that I've definitely gained time management skills, and also my learning capabilities have increased. I can definitely tell myself that I'm learning more solo than from a teacher. Another thing is the teachers at the high school. It's way different than professors at the college, and that really helps. That will really help me during my 4-year college experience. I already have like kind of a starter kit for college. Another thing that I would like to mention is you don't really miss out on all the high school experiences that you think you would just because you're doing Governor's School. Personally, I think it's pretty much the same. I am missing 2 blocks of high school at the start of the day, but that's about it. Lastly, I'd like to say the Governor's School is a great program. It's free. That's one of the main things that a lot of people should take into account, is a free program, and you get college credits. That's going to lower your tuition by a lot when you go to a 4-year university. I'd like to ask if there's any questions from any of you guys.
Thank you very much. You're a junior this year?
I'm a senior.
You're a senior this year?
At Alleghany. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ross.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gray. On to the next item, 25-71, Annual Field Trip Report. This is for information.
Yes, Chairman Littleton and members of the board, pursuant to your policy, we provide you with an annual update on field trips. We took approximately 210 instructional field trips last year. Those are instructional field trips, that's not athletic field trips. And they included a good variety of sites, both local and reasonably far away. So there's a little listing there for you in your memo for your review. But we have no current concerns for our field trip policy's adequacy to meet student needs. So we believe that meets the requirements of your policy. Let us know if you have any questions.
Thank you very much, Senator Moulton. Next item, 25-72, consider approval of resolution designated October as Bully Prevention Month. This is an action item. Mr. Ross.
Chairman Littleton, Ms. Hawkman, Ms. Meek Johnson, school board members. Of course, October is Bully Prevention Month, and you have a resolution before you have this the right read.
Thank you, Mr. Ross, for bringing that to my attention.
Mr. Ross. Do you have it in front of you, Mr. Ross?
I have copies of that resolution. Thank you very much.
All right.
whereas school bullying has become an increasingly significant problem in the United States and Virginia, and whereas over 20% of the youth in the United States are estimated to be involved in bullying each year, either as a bully or as a victim, and whereas an estimated 160,000 students in kindergarten through 12th grade miss school every day due to a fear of being bullied, and whereas bullying can take many forms, including verbal, physical, and most recently in cyberspace, and can happen in many places on and off school grounds. And whereas it is important for Virginia parents, students, teachers, and school administrators to be aware of bullying and encourage discussion of the problem as a school community. And whereas the Alleghany Highlands School Board has developed a model policy on anti-bullying to encourage positive behaviors and to eliminate bullying behaviors. Therefore, be it resolved that the Alleghany Highlands School Board recognizes the month of October 2024 as VSBA Bullying Prevention Month, with the intention that the issue of bullying and its prevention be discussed in Virginia schools and classrooms during that time. Adopted in Alleghany County, Virginia, the 16th day of September 2024. I make a motion, we approve.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wright. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Ms. Scruggs Duncan, roll call.
Mr. Eric?
Yes.
Mrs. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mr. Franson?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Littleton?
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Morgan?
Yes.
Mrs. Scruggs Duncan?
Yes.
And Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Thank you.
Next item, 25-73. Consider resolution declaring September Attendance Awareness Month. This is an action. Ms. Fox.
Good evening, Chairman Littleton and Vice Chairman Branson, members of the board, Superintendent Haltman, and the Superintendent Steve Johnson. We came before you last year asking you to adopt the resolution we recognize September as Attendance Awareness Month, and we're coming back before you again this year to ask you to do the same thing. I will say that looking at our attendance this year, it does look good, and I just want to give a shout out to all of our principals and our teachers, everybody that's making that happen. With the new attendance guidelines that we've had several parents calling and saying, oh, I didn't realize that my child couldn't miss. They thought that all the absences were excused, and they really did not understand the difference between chronic absenteeism versus truancy. So I really appreciate everything that you all did to support us in that. So I think we're going to start seeing attendance going in the right way. And Mr. Wright, you did such a phenomenal job. Do you mind? I'll let you do our resolution as well.
Thank you, Mr. Wright, as our speed reader.
Yeah, our resident reader. Whereas the nation is experiencing a school absenteeism crisis brought on by COVID-19 pandemic and other challenges that have eroded positive conditions for learning at school, including physical and emotional health and safety, a sense of belonging, connection and support, academic challenges and engagement, and adults and peers with social and emotional competency, which motivates students and their families to show up and engage. Whereas reducing chronic absence, missing 10% or more of school for any reason, requires taking a comprehensive trauma-informed approach that starts with prevention and early intervention, including developing routines and trusting relationships that create a sense of belonging rather than responding with punitive action, which research finds is not particularly effective. Whereas improving attendance and engagement takes schools, families, elected leaders, and other community partners working together to rebuild regular and trusting communications and to identify and address barriers to being in school. Whereas taking attendance daily in a caring, consistent manner is essential to identifying when students begin to miss too much school and for engaging students and families as early as possible with needed support and resources. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Alleghany Highlands Public School District stands with the nation in recognizing September as Attendance Awareness Month. We hereby commit to focusing on reducing absenteeism and addressing the factors that cause students to miss school in order to ensure all children are equitable opportunity to learn, grow, and thrive academically, emotionally, and socially. We recognize that we must work together to build an engaging school environment that motivates attendance and sends the message that learning can and must continue. Adopted this 16th day of September 2024.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Wright. Does anyone want to make a motion to approve this resolution? Mr. Franson, motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Ms. Marie Fitzpatrick,
Second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Ayers.
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Fitzpatrick.
Yes.
Mr. Cranston.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Littleton.
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Morgan.
Yes.
Mrs. Scruggs Duncan.
Yes.
And Mr. Wright.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cox. Next item, 25-74, school quality profile update. This is for information. Mr. Ross.
The state profile is out and it's on the state website for school accreditation. The biggest things you need to know is all of our schools are accredited. 3 are accredited with conditions and 3 are accredited without conditions. AHS, CMS, and Mountain View are with conditions. Callahan, Sharon, and Gita Watson without conditions. But we know where we are and we're working to improve and get better at those things. So the accountability part, it's just about there with the state, but they're still looking at some, well, mainly just making the dates when things are going to be set in stone. But it's set in stone at this point. Like I said, we just got to, that piece is going to have some different calculations and things we're going to have to get used to and learn how to make sure we're doing correctly. But other than that, we're plan is to continue to move forward and improve. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Ross. 25-75, annual homebound report for the 23-24 years from information. Dr. Conway.
Chairman Littleton, Chairman Cranston, esteemed board members, Superintendent Harlan, Superintendent Smith Johnson. Bringing you the numbers today for last year's homeschool and homebound and home base, report. Last year we had 18 instructors, 20 different students. As you can see from the data, most of them were on there temporarily. We had 9 without an IEP, 10 with an IEP, none were on there full year, and 1 with an IEP that was on there all year with home-based instruction. And that's our data from 23-24 for homebound. Any questions?
What's this agenda item? I'm sorry,
We're on 25-75.
So the total homeschool students.
This is homebound, home-based.
Wait, I'm sorry, you said homeschool.
I did, I misspoke
Okay.
actually. Yeah, it's my fault. That is.
Thank you, Dr. Conway.
Thank you.
Next item, 25-76, annual out of zone and non-resident update. This is for information.
Good evening, Chairman Littleton, Vice Chair Cranston, school board members, Superintendent Halterman, and our guests in the audience. As of September the 5th, we had 139 applications for elementary students who did not live in their district. You can see the number that were accepted and the number that were denied for various reasons. Non-resident is a little bit different. That is like a student that wants to come into our district that does not live in our district. And we had 42 applicants and accepted 38 and 4 were denied. And this happens every year. Those numbers are very close to last year's numbers. Are there any questions about that? You have data and some pages behind that we have been keeping on this process, and it changes each and every day, and we monitor it very closely.
So these out of area students, Ms. Steve Johnson, are probably students, like children of teachers that are coming into the area or live near the border and like our schools better?
There is a little bit of everything that you have just described. Yes, that's correct.
And we like to have those students that we can educate in our community. So we look at them very closely and let them come if we can meet their needs.
Some of our schools are a lot closer than some of their schools.
I guess that's true.
Craig County and
Yes.
Monroe County.
Is the reason we deny them is because
Sometimes it's based on class sizes of the particular grade level. Sometimes it's based on some other data, like things that have happened in the past, but mostly it's about the class sizes of the schools' buildings. Principals look at it first. They take a good look at what they have been brought to their attention, and then we go along with what their decisions. They know their school better than the rest of us do. So that's basically how we make those decisions.
But just because a student is allowed from out of area,
Like a
one year they're
student-
not allowed, it doesn't guarantee them all the way through school.
No, it doesn't. It's an annual application, and each year we ask those families that wish to consider that as the appropriate placement for their child to submit another application. So we look at it year by year.
For these parents of the out-of-area students, is this on a first come, first served basis, or?
We do look at that very closely, but sometimes things happen in the middle of the year, and we take a look at those as well. So it's a little bit of both.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, we'll move on to 25-77, annual homeschool report. This is for information as well.
Okay, gosh. As of September 5th, we had 234 students who are receiving their education through a homeschool instructional program. This includes 24 students whose families have applied for religious exemption. You see the breakdown by schools, elementary schools, middle schools, high schools. That 234 is close to what we ended last school year with. So we are at about the same place we were this time last year with the number of homeschool students in our division.
I know in the former Alleghany County school system, we allowed students to come to take a class, possibly homeschool students that had all their proper vaccinations and things like that. Are we still allowing?
I don't know of any current situations.
We don't have any current situations of that nature. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Needles. Administrative reports and recommendations. Next item, 25-78, consider approval of school board policy committee. This is an action item.
Certainly, and Chairman Littleton, members of the board, if this is something you all are ready to take action on tonight, you certainly can. We spoke at the last meeting about our recommendation to have a board committee within a certain time boundary to help us with some anticipated policy revisions. We're just seeing those come forward more frequently. Just want to make sure we're being very, very clear. We do not anticipate some form of controversial policy or something of that nature. We do anticipate continued changes to the Code of Virginia that percolate to us, that require sometimes typographical changes even, sometimes changes of more substance to our policy manual. So we thought having a board committee might be helpful to all of us. We do at this time, and we did not know this last month, so we added this into your memo today. Some initial policy topics might include, say, cafeteria procurement that we're looking at a little bit differently based on some different guidelines, and trying to determine whether we need a policy for that or a standard operating procedure for that. So that's just a good example of the type of thing this committee might address to begin with. And certainly it's at the board's option to create it.
Any questions? Motions?
How many revisions to the policy do you anticipate between now and next month?
Between now and next month, there's just a set that needs to go for review, right? So, but what we're seeing is we are seeing those sort of sets get larger. And that's what you see like later on in the agenda with the number of revisions. And lots of times those revisions are very, very simple revisions. They might be the changing of one word in a policy, or a set of reference code, like if the Code of Virginia has been updated, sometimes we have to put another number on there to make sure that somebody can find a relevant law. It's often that kind of information.
I think this would be a committee that's worthwhile for us to have. And with the future going on with all the changes that we're seeing currently with the state and have been seeing for the past couple of years.
And our suggestion is based on current board policy, this be time bound. We can see if we think the group is useful to the board. We can certainly evaluate that. And certainly have the capacity for 2 members, but of course it's the board's option. So the board could elect not to act on this tonight also. That's fine as well.
Is this committee supposed to make changes or make suggestions, or I kind of feel like this committee is kind of redundant to what we already do. It just sounds like another committee.
Would you all like me to?
I mean, we went through all of the we went through all the policies during consolidation, and that was a very laborious project. I'm not interested in doing that ever.
A little intense.
I know there are people that have been talking about it during their campaigns and things, but nobody deserves to have to go through that to be a good school board member. That's my opinion. I mean, we're presented these policies 1 month, and then the next month we have to approve them. So that gives everybody a whole month to read through them and make sure they're on board. I mean, not volunteering.
And we can certainly go with the board prefers. Just we're offering that opportunity if that's helpful. If not, the staff will certainly continue to make recommendations through the current process, which is 1 month for information, 1 month for action, under most circumstances. There are occasions where sometimes we have to go forward quickly, but we hope to let you all know that, in advance of that, if that ever happens. So, either way is fine with us.
I think a policy committee would have its most usefulness not with what you were talking about, which is the mundane changes that often trickle down. Last year we started tackling cell phone policy. So we were a little ahead of the curve on that one, and I think it gave staff plenty of bandwidth. Now, thankfully, we I think are ahead of the curve on that one, but I think that would be an example of where I think a committee like this might be useful. Not necessarily for the mundane things, and Mr. Wright, you're correct. I don't think digging back through the entire policy manual would be anybody's idea of fun, but I guess the way I would see a committee like this is when there's the creation potentially of new policy or substantive changes to an existing policy being recommended, a policy review committee would be a good place to run that through and then make a recommendation to the larger board, perhaps. So probably not, I mean, my vision of it, I guess, would not be something that would meet very frequently, but the establishment of it, it might be worth its weight in gold, just depending upon what we're looking at. So.
I think someone might find that it's worth its weight in gold. I think it's going to cost its weight in gold. I mean, the reason we use the Virginia School Board Association and their policy suggestions is because they have a team of legal professionals that go through these. If we start going through every single policy we have and changing little things, I think we're going to have to run each one of them by an attorney to make sure they approve of these things. And I think our legal bills could just go through the roof. I mean, I think we're kind of setting ourselves up to spend a lot of money that I don't think we need to, because I'm not going to feel comfortable making drastic policy changes without an attorney looking at it. I mean, that makes us liable. So I mean, that's one of the true beauties of being a part of the Virginia School Board Association and having somebody to help. What they do is they look at things that have recommendations from the DOE and things that have happened, legislatively, and and they make sure we're following the law. And if we decide we're gonna do it on our own, not as attorneys, I think we're setting ourselves up. And I don't think we can afford to do that. I mean, I think if we see a policy that we don't agree with, you know, it's our local choice to change it. But if we just start going through our whole policy manual and changing all of these things, I mean, we might have, you know, but I mean, I think we should be free to change anything as we see necessary, but and you know, if we need to consult with our attorneys for that, that's fine, but redoing everything, I think is inexpensive.
I think you're right around that, Mr. Ray. Thank you very much.
So I'd make a motion, we table this.
I'll second that.
Need a roll call on this?
Mr. Ayers?
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mr. Franklin?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Littleton?
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Morgan?
Yes.
Mrs. Scruggs Duncan?
Yes, ma'am.
And Mr. Wright?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, next item, 25-79, consider appointment of liaison for School Health Advisory Board. This is an action.
Good evening again. Our school division had a very active school health advisory board. We started our first organizational meeting in the winter of 2023, and we have done lots of things like providing an advisement on student health matters, including school nutrition, student health services, nursing, student mental health, and certain PE topics. The group is comprised mostly of staff members and some other outside agencies, and we meet periodically, at least quarterly as needed. It's not a committee of board members. This year we did spend a little more time because of the wellness policy update and some policy changes. And in August of 2023, the board appointed Ms. Danielle Morgan to serve as that representative. There are no board policies to prohibit her from serving again, or her continued service would be wonderful. We do have a virtual option now if they can't attend in person. So Mrs. Morgan has been a great asset to our team, and I'd like for you all to consider appointment again of someone to this School Health Advisory Board for 24-25.
I think if Ms. Morgan is willing, I'll make that motion.
Ms. Morgan, how do you feel about that? Sorry.
I would be more than happy to continue to serve on that committee if it's the pleasure of the board.
I believe it is. Thank you very much. Yep, so we have a first by Ms. Scruggs and a second by Mr. Franson. Roll call, please.
Mr. Ayers?
Yes.
Mrs. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mr. Franklin?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Littleton?
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Morgan?
Yes.
Mrs. Scruggs Duncan?
Yes.
And Mr. Wright?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you all, and thank you to Mrs. Morgan again.
Thank you. Next item, 25-80, consider appointment of liaison for capital improvement needs. This is an action item.
And Chairman Littleton, members of the board, this is gonna sound a little bit like what Ms. Steve Johnson just said. About this time last year, we actually appointed Mr. Littleton to serve as a go-between for us and the board when we're working through construction and maintenance projects that are capital improvement need projects. We would love to continue that relationship if that's the pleasure of the board, but we're also happy for the board to take whatever other action. We appreciate all Mr. Littleton has done to help us streamline some of that communication. That's also not a committee of the board, and it's not actually a committee. What Ms. Steve Johnson was talking about is a group of people who meets regularly. This is a little bit different. This is basically phone calls, review of contracts, some of these kinds of things that are helpful to all of us, hopefully the board and the staff the same. So that's our ask this evening.
I think it's very important to have different board members that can do different things and wear different hats and come to the table with different specialties. And with that, I'll make a motion. Mr. Littleton is our liaison for capital improvement needs. We're not even giving him a choice.
Don't even let me speak. Roll call, Ms. Littleton.
Who was the second?
There were 2 seconds.
There were 2 seconds, so I don't know which one came first.
Tammy was first.
She's closer
Tammy,
to you.
Marie,
No,
yeah,
it's your
you-
turn, Marie.
Okay.
Mr. Aaron.
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Fitzpatrick.
Yes.
Mr. Franzen.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Littleton.
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Morgan.
Yes.
Mrs. Scruggs Duncan.
Yes.
And Mr. Wright.
Yes.
Next item, 25-81, introduction of vision SROs.
Good evening,
Mr. Vaughn.
good evening, Mr. Littleton and school board members, Superintendent Halterman, and members here in the room. Alleghany Highlands schools are fortunate to have the relationship that we do with our local law enforcement individuals who support our schools, offer safety at our schools, and many other activities within the course of the day. And we're so fortunate again to have this great relationship. So we had an opportunity to reach out to our law enforcement partners to come in tonight to introduce themselves, and if you guys happen to have any questions to ask these folks, I want to turn it over to the sheriff, Sheriff Moore, to address the board and answer any questions.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing us to have an opportunity to come up here tonight. First, I'd like to thank Mr. Jones for letting me borrow his glasses. Mr. Vaughn was correct in the relationship with the school system and the SROs is tremendous. Many of our SROs are senior officers. They've been there for a while. And I feel like I was just telling them earlier that the change we made this year with some swapping of the schools was the best thing we could have done. I have had so many positive comments from the school systems this year about how the deputies are blending in with the kids and with the teachers. And that makes me feel really good, because I feel like we made the right decision. And they're just proving that we did. They're good officers, they work hard. And I just want to thank you for the relationship, for the support that you give them. And I just want you to know, I want the parents of the children to know, I want the loved ones of the people who work there to know that safety and security is our priority, and it is not taken lightly. Sometimes we may go a little overboard. Mr. Vaughn will be the first to tell you I sometimes act before I think, but we always come to a very good conclusion. My priority is the safety of that school, and I may sometimes step on his toes accidentally. The reason that I take such great pride in protecting those schools is because those children are our future in Alleghany County. And we have to realize that, and we have to do everything we can to protect them. And we have to make the parents feel that we are keeping their children safe. Once again, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to serve and protect our students and our schools. And I'm going to let Mr. Vaughn take back over. Thank you.
Can I introduce all of your officers? Go ahead.
First, we have Officer Ricky Bates. He works at the Sharon School now, Sharon Elementary. Positive comments all the time. I got some really good pictures the other day of Ricky doing a math war with some of the students, and that's right up his alley. Ricky's a very smart person. I hope you won him. I got bad guard. Okay. The next deputy we have is Deputy Sierra Cosby. She works at Mountain View Elementary and Clifton Academy. She's pulling double duty this year, and she's doing a fantastic job as well. Nothing but positive comments from the staff at that school. And Sierra's a pleasure to supervise as well. She doesn't cause no problems. She always comes to work and does her job. Thank you. Next is Officer Deputy David Creedon. He is at Callahan this year. I have 2 grandchildren that go to school there, and they love Deputy David. They said, he plays with us, and he does this, and he does that, and they absolutely love him. I know the school staff loves him as well. So thank you. And last but not least, we have Deputy Duddy. He's at the high school, he's not a student. He is he does a fantastic job, gets along with the kids great, gets along with the staff great. And once again, all 4 of these deputies are deputies that we can count on. We put the trust in them to take care of you guys at the schools. And in an emergency, you know, we pray that that never happens, but in an emergency, we hope that they will respond accordingly. And then last but not least, we have Captain Chris Fisher. Everybody knows Captain Fisher. He is he's just part of Alleghany County. He's been in the school system for many years. He's been a DARE officer, crime prevention officer, runs the bike rodeo. Help me out.
That's enough.
Okay. He's a local preacher, does a fabulous job at everything that we ask him to do. And he is our admin captain. He takes care of all of our administrative duties and our outreach captain as well. And I couldn't ask for a finer man to represent me in the community. And I just thank him for everything that he does. So,
thank you.
And that's all.
Also want to recognize our partners in Covington. We certainly have 2 great SROs with Covington Police Department, that being Roger Dawson, who's at Covington Middle School, and Mike Browning at Judah Watson. And they want to
Thank you all very much.
Tune in and see what we say during our school board comments.
All right, 25-82. Consider approval of supplementary pay increase. This is an action. Mrs. Irvin, we thank you very much.
Good evening again. Yes, we're asking for an increase in pay for $30 an hour for these supplemental duties that often our staff provide. After school teacher, outdoor readiness teacher, alternative education teacher, driver's ed teacher, homebound teacher, remedial teachers for various programs that we have, PALS, all in Virginia, Saturday school teachers, and teachers covering classes due to lack of a substitute. The current hourly rate for this is $25 an hour, and we're recommending an increase to $30 an hour effective.
I make a motion we approve.
I have one question. As Mr. Franson's always taught me to ask the question, is it sustainable?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is, and it will allow us to be more competitive. Some of our divisions are moving as high as
I have a question. This is for the hours they are doing these things, or certain individuals are hired to fill these positions? Like teachers covering classes due to lack of substitute. Would that be just on a day that there was no substitute? That is it per hour or occurrence?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that's people that we really need, so I'm all for giving them $5 extra an hour.
Any other questions? We currently have a motion by Mr. Ray on the table.
I'll second that.
Second by Ms. Duncan. Roll call.
Mr. Aaron.
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Fitzpatrick.
Yes.
Mr. Franson.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Littleton.
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Morgan.
Yes.
Mrs. Scruggs Duncan.
Yes.
And Mr. Wright.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Mr. I think next item, 25-83, bus fuel mileage reimbursement rate. This is for information. Sir, I think we have you.
We're also recommending that we use a rate of $3.83 per mile for the use of Alleghany Public School buses effective for the school year. We don't have this a lot, but if anyone would need to use a school bus for any certain reason, we're just setting this rate. It doesn't rarely, I think,
I don't know that we
this
can use
happens.
it.
I don't know, except since I've been here.
The rate this past year was,
It's the same,
Same,
really,
okay, so
it's
same,
based
same.
on this pupil transportation, what do we do every year?
I think in the past, we've like 4-H buses and stuff to take kids to camp, that kind of activity has used the buses. Make a motion, we approve.
this is for
It's a
information.
information.
Next one.
Make a motion, we approve that.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Irvin. Next item, 25-84, consider resolution of appreciation. This is an action item.
Chairman Littleton and members of the board, Ms. Irvin's gonna try to sit down, we're gonna make her stand right back.
That's right.
You may have noticed this was not active on your agenda until just recently because we wanted to keep this a bit of a happy surprise. It's Melinda and I's great pleasure to bring forward to you a resolution of appreciation in honor of Ms. Irvin's dedicated and wonderful service as a Director of Finance from Covington City Public Schools as well as from Alleghany Highlands Public Schools. She has helped us with so very much, and it's difficult for Melinda and I to even express all she has helped with, because these things go from day-to-day expenses that might be as small as $5 right on up to helping make sure all our employees had health insurance continuity and got paid and all those good things in the consolidation. So we're very appreciative of Ms. Irvin's service, and I'm sure Ms. Snead Johnson wants to add a little bit to that, and then we have a nice resolution for her.
Yes, and Ms. Irvin's service was very, very similar in Covington City Public Schools, and she did all of those things that Ms. Hoffman talked about. Rebecca, like the rest of us, she's on call 24/7 and does work on many different days and times and hours to make sure things get done, and she's been a great asset to both divisions and the new division, so greatly gonna miss her.
We're delighted to do this for Ms. Irvin tonight, and we do need a member of the board to read the draft resolution.
Mr. Wright, would you like to?
Sure. You won't have to borrow any glasses yet. Whereas Rebecca Irvin has been a central figure in providing sound financial practices to Alleghany Highlands Public Schools since the school division was created in July 2022. And whereas she worked for Covington City Public Schools before the creation of AHPS, and her leadership, professionalism, and sense of teamwork have helped place the joint school division in a strong financial position. And whereas Mrs. Irvin's wisdom and knowledge of school finance have been invaluable to the school board. And whereas the school board has reluctantly accepted Mrs. Irvin's retirement after 20+ years of dedicated public service to Covington City Public Schools and Alleghany Highlands Public Schools. And whereas Mrs. Irvin has been a friend to the board and an invaluable liaison to the local governments that fund Alleghany Highlands Public Schools. Therefore, be it resolved that the Alleghany Highlands School Board recognizes Mrs. Irvin's outstanding public service and dedication to the students and staff of Covington City Public Schools and Alleghany Highlands Public Schools, and extends its sincere best wishes for her retirement. Adopted in Alleghany County.
I'll move for approval.
We have a motion by Mr. Ayers, second by Mr. Wright. Roll call?
Mr. Aaron?
Absolutely.
Mrs. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mr. Franson?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Littleton?
Very happy to say yes.
Mrs. Morgan?
Yes.
Mrs. Scruggs Duncan? And Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Now back onto the not so fun stuff. 25-85, review policy DLC. This is for information.
Yes, this is for information, we'll see approval at the October board meeting. This policy updates the expenses reimbursements for AHPS employees to align with IRS recommended rates. The daily meals and incidental expense rate is increased from $50 to $64, and the mileage reimbursement rate is increased from 58.5 to 67 cents per mile. So it's a nice increase.
Yes, it is.
Any questions? If not, we'll move on to the next item. Thank you, Ms. Sarah. 25-86, review of policy regulation IICA-R. This is for information.
Yes, Chairman Littleton and members of the board, your policy IICA, which governs field trips, directs that you develop a regulation and companion to it that just kind of gives you some information about various practices, numbers of students with chaperones, these kinds of things. We have that regulation proposed for you and would suggest that you consider it for approval at your next meeting. We're happy to answer questions about it, of course.
Any questions? If not, we'll move on to 25-87. Review of policy section 1, instructional programs. This is for information. Mr. Ross.
You have before you the VSBA, their opinions on various things, and then after our review, our thoughts as far as policy updates. Most of it was code changes and references. So today is just for information. Next month for approval. Everything's pretty much just policy updates for mainly references.
As Mr. Wright said, this is the fun stuff. Any questions from anybody? If not, we'll revisit it next month. Thank you, Mr. Ross. Next item, 25-88, consider approval of policy section A, foundations and basics, complement updates, commitment updates. This is for action.
Yes, and Chairman Wright, members of the board, these are the same ones we discussed last month. They're also a very good example of some of the simple changes that occur just in response to various updates to the Code of Virginia. Just to real quickly go over those, this does change the non-discrimination policy to include prohibitions against discrimination based on ethnic origin and leaving intact race and national origin as also protected categories. It clarifies also some language around the comprehensive plan and the literacy plan that's related back to the Virginia Literacy Act. So we're happy to answer any questions you might have, but we would recommend those for approval tonight.
Any questions for Superintendent Harper? Not, does someone want to make a motion? We have a motion by Mr. Franson.
Second.
Second by Mr. Wright. Roll call.
Mr. Arndt?
Yes.
Mrs. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mr. Franson?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Littleton?
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Morgan?
Yes.
Mrs. Scruggs Duncan?
Yes.
And Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Next item, 25-89, consider approval of policy section B, school board governance and operation updates. This is an action item.
Yes, and Chairman Littleton and members of the board, this is also mainly updates to code section references. A slight exception to that is that it does include some language updates regarding student speech being allowed as part of public participation. That has never been disallowed in Alleghany Highlands Public Schools, so that now is in the policy itself. And then some information about remote participation that's a little more inclusive of board members who may have disabilities. So all of that comes to you recommended from our team, and we'd love your approval.
So moved.
We have a motion by Mr. Wright. Do we have a second or any questions?
Second.
Second by Ms. Fitzpatrick. Roll call, please.
Mr. Arndt?
Yes.
Mrs. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mr. Franson?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Littleton?
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Morgan?
Yes.
Mrs. Scruggs Duncan?
Yes.
And Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Next item, 25-90, consider approval of policy section C, general school administration updates. This is an action item.
And Chairman Littleton and members of the board, this is actually a brief update section. It only affects policy CLA, reporting acts of violence and substance abuse. Basically, the change is related to a new law supporting research-based hazing prevention, so that we just come into additional compliance with that law. As a reminder, we still provide our students with all the character counts and anti-bullying and all those kinds of good things. This is just a way of mentioning that again in this policy, and it is part of code requirements. So we'd love your approval on this tonight too.
I just have one comment. On our last policy, you said this has been, that our team has gone through this and approves all this. So they've gone through it, and then we get a chance to go through it, and we get to prove it. So
Yes.
this is just, there are lots of checks and balances on all of these policies. I just want to make that clear.
Thank you. So would you like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Wright. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Ayers. Roll call.
Mr. Barrett?
Yes.
Mrs. Patrick?
Yes.
Mr. Franson?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Littleton?
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Morgan?
Yes.
Mrs. Scruggs Duncan?
Yes.
And Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Thank you. Next item, 25-91. Consider approval of policy section D, physical management updates. This is an action item. Mrs. Irving.
It's the same as Mr. Wright just said. Section D, physical management updates, DA, DG, DJ, these are basically code changes due to Virginia code or legal references and cross references updated to reflect code amendments.
Any questions for Ms. Irving?
Presented last meeting, and we recommend approval of this one.
Motion by anybody?
Make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mrs. Fitzpatrick. Do we have a second?
So moved. Second.
Mr. Roll call.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Littleton?
Yes.
Mrs. Duncan?
Yes.
And Mr. Wright?
25-2, consider policy F, facility development updates. This is an action item.
And Chairman Littleton and members of the board, back again with a couple of really similar sounding updates. These are primarily updates to legal references and cross references, and an update to a policy title. As we pointed out last time, it does also drop a policy, that's policy FF on the public dedication of new facilities. That's simply recommended to go offline because it's not legally required. It doesn't prevent the board from publicly dedicating facilities. It just simply is a recommended change because it's not required to be in the policy manual. So our team's been through those, and we feel really good about these policy recommendations as well. We know y'all went through them last month too.
Yeah, we've had a month and the Congress had a month.
Any questions, or does anyone want to make a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion we approve.
You have a motion by Ms. Morgan. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Mrs. Scruggs Duncan, second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Ayers?
Yes.
Mrs. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mr. Franson?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Littleton?
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Morgan?
Yes.
Mrs. Scruggs Duncan?
Yes.
And Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Thank you. Next item, 25-93. Consider approval of policy JP student publications. This is an action item.
Last month I came to you with this policy. Basically, the only change is there's fewer reference sections in the policy by the VSBA, so we're recommending it be approved.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Anyone have any questions or want to make a motion?
I make a motion to approve.
We have a motion by Ms. Fitzpatrick. We have a second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Wright. Roll call, please.
Mr. Ayers?
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mr. Franson?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Littleton?
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Morgan?
Yes.
Mrs. Scruggs Duncan?
Yes.
And Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Thank you. Almost down to 25-94. Consider approval of policy updates. This is an action item as well.
Good evening, school board members. Again, I presented these policies last month, just as you have been hearing for the last few minutes. Most of these are legal reference updates. These are across multiple categories of areas I work with, areas from school management, school crisis planning, safety drills, to employment of family members, to drugs in school and student records, among others. I'd be happy to talk about any of these, but I do ask that you approve these here this evening.
Thank
questions for Mr. Plummer? Not, someone like to make a motion? A motion. Mr. Franson made a motion, anyone want to make a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Fitzpatrick. Roll call?
Mr. Aaron.
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Fitzpatrick.
Yes.
Mr. Franson.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Littleton.
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Morgan.
Yes.
Mrs. Scruggs Duncan.
Yes.
And Mr. Ray.
Yes, ma'am.
Next item, 25-95, consider of approval of JHCF wellness policy. This is an action.
Good evening again. Back in July, I brought to your attention a new policy that had been developed by our School Health Advisory Board after many meetings with some new goals in nutrition, physical activity, and other school-based activities. The School Health Advisory Board met many times to go over the triennial assessment and develop the proposed policy changes. We worked with the school nutrition office, the Department of Education for best practices, and we now have a regulation for you to take a look at, which you have seen tonight, the policy and the regulation. This is a transition to more healthier practices in our division for any type of activity that involves some food, and our students will have access to healthier choices along with some typical choices for celebrations. We will also work with our school nutrition team more to help families provide those healthy snacks with some mini activities that we're going to provide to our school teams. And we request approval of that policy tonight if you so choose to do that.
Thank you very much, Ms. Snee Johnson. Does anyone have any questions? Anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make it.
Motion by Ms. Scruggs Duncan. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Fitzpatrick. Roll call?
Mr. Aaron.
Yes.
Mrs. Fitzpatrick.
Yes.
Mr. Franson.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Littleton.
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Morgan.
Yes.
Mrs. Scruggs Duncan.
Yes.
And Mr. Ray.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Next item is 25-96, additions to the agenda, which I do not believe there is any. Next item is 25-97, public comment. Ms. Wills, do we have?
We have two. We have Alex Brigham.
This is an information item, just borrow your verbiage. Good evening. Our Bible says that people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. So I'd just like to read a few things this evening. First of which is just a piece of the Virginia State Constitution. This is Article 1, Section 16. I've clipped part of it, but it says that religion or the duty which we owe to our Creator and the manner of discharging it can be directed only by reason and conviction, not by force or violence. And therefore all men are equally entitled to the free exercise of religion according to the dictates of conscience. And it's this last part that I really want to emphasize, and that it is the mutual duty of all to practice Christian forbearance, love, and charity towards each other. This is in our state constitution. And as we know by our federal constitution, we all have the freedom to practice religion as we see fit. But specifically in the Virginia State Constitution, James Madison, George Mason, and the men who drafted this before our federal constitution included, regardless of what your religious belief is, that all, the mutual duty of all is to practice Christian forbearance, love, and charity towards each other. George Mason actually suggested maybe we ought to tone that down a little bit, but James Madison barked back and said, no, we need specifically this phrasing in here. And I bring that up because I think it's a fair aim for us as schools to say we want our students to be law-abiding citizens. So that's piece one of just informational knowledge for us this evening. Last month when I had the privilege of coming to speak, the phrase, the separation of church and state was mentioned. And while this phrase is in our Virginia State Constitution, the separation of church and state is actually nowhere in any founding document in this nation, in this state, period. I think it's something that's taken today and run with a little bit, but it's actually a phrase that Thomas Jefferson mentioned, I believe it was when he was president, in a letter he wrote to the Danbury, Massachusetts Baptist community. The Baptists, back in that time, were not as big as they are today, but the Baptists were concerned that as the United States grew, that there would be the establishment of a state religion as was practiced in Europe of the day. For example, the state church in England was the Anglican church. And if you didn't follow the Anglican denominational beliefs and practices, you could be persecuted, thrown in jail, things like that. So Thomas Jefferson writes back to these concerned Baptists that there is a wall of separation between church and state, but the heart and the intention that he had behind it was that government bodies, institutions are not to infringe upon the rights and the freedoms of the citizen to practice what they believe in the public sphere. I think that phrase is taken and it's run with a little bit today to mean quite the opposite, but the original intention of our founding fathers was that we have this freedom to practice it or encouraged to practice it in the public sphere, whether that be government, schools, etc. To the point that, there were church services held in our Congress buildings to start out. So, like I said, people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. I just wanted to present these things, for consideration this evening, because it's certainly something that's on my heart and my mind. And just a reminder, everything that we do, our founding fathers, I really truly believe that they held these values, and that's what's made our nation, our state, our county so strong. So just like last month, just a reminder to us all, in anything that we do, these decisions that we make as a school board and everything, are we seeking the counsel of God? Are we seeking to honor God as we make these decisions and do these things? It's certainly something that I know I can grow and be better at as a teacher, but that's my aim and my goal. So God bless you all. I'm over at the high school if you guys ever need anything. Thanks for having me tonight.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Jeff Irvin.
I don't know if I can follow that. Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman, Board, the Superintendent, I'm here on behalf of the town of Clifton Forward. We're ecstatic in Clifton. It'll be the homecoming parade and the bonfire. Our businesses are buzzing. I just walked down the street today and two businesses pulled me in and said, look, I got everything ready, or whatever. So let's pray it don't rain. But I don't know if it's going to work or not. But and I'd like to thank Ms. Bowles, the JV and varsity cheerleader coaches and superintendent and everybody that's worked with the town of Clifton for allowing us to have it. And thank you, and we hope we're doing right.
Thank you very much, Mr. Irvin. It's great to always have positive comments. Next item, 25-98, school board members and superintendent comments. Does anyone want to volunteer? Tammy, you go first.
Thank you, Mr. Irvin. The excitement of the community you brought to the microphone today. And we know we had that same last year, to let the students see how the community supports them. And I love the idea of paving it from one downtown to the other each year. And the other community that isn't hosting the parade is still painting the street blue. But I appreciate, and there's a tropical storm, but we'll see. I'm sorry Mr. Brigham left, and I appreciate him pointing out that the Constitution of Virginia actually asks us to be decent. And it's good to have somebody point that out. Ms. Fox, I was down at a restaurant and I heard two women who I presume to be school mothers talking about the difference in absenteeism and truancy. So it's getting through to the community. I'm sorry the resource officers left also because the most important job they have is keeping our students safe. But they also, every day, are building relationships with these kids. They represent law enforcement, and that students may come with a preconceived idea of what a policeman means and does, but they present as friendly and caring human beings, and they're not mean and scary, and they truly care about the kids, and I wish that they'd stay so we could talk about that. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Grossman. Mr. Franson, you will go next.
Yeah, I'll welcome you all to our meeting tonight.
you know, it's a lot of fun to see these kids. You know, those little watching kids come up here, teach us a little bit of math. You know, and for the teachers being so involved in different ways to teach kids. I mean, you know, back when we went to school, life was different. They didn't teach us like that. Or at least I don't remember that far back. But it is a pleasure to see those teachers and those kids react to each other. You know, just like last meeting. You know, I love that too. The governor's school, Mr. Graham, I think it was Mr. Ross came too. That's awesome. And we support the governor's school because it does a lot of that. First, it gets them a heads up in college, but it also saves the parents a ton of money. You know, because most of us parents, that's what we do. Pay for the kids' education. The SROs, they're a blessing in this place. These schools, I mean, blessing. Not only do they protect to serve our kids, but they build this bond, this relationship, so that, you know, some areas you go to and the kids will run from a police officer. That's not how it is here, because these kids love these guys and these ladies, right? So that's awesome. That is absolutely awesome. Thank God I got another note here, I can't read it. That's not a good sign, is it? Mr. Burke, he was here last month. I agree 550%, okay? When, as I said last month, when you push God out of the schools, out of the government, what do you get? A godless situation. And even if you don't believe, you know, if you're not a believer in God, just the fact that as a believer, that you are good, you treat people good, you treat people like you treat yourselves, you know, if you want to be treated, that can't do nothing but make good things happen. Again, I had two goals in my life when I got on this board. First goal was to see consolidation, which probably some of you may not agree with. It has went well. We've had a few bumps, but we've been blessed. And the other thing is to get prayer back in schools. Okay, I'll keep working on it. I'm not too sure how far we'll get with this because I think some lawyers somewhere says don't do that. But you know, each one of us has to make that decision. We have to look God in the eye one day and say, yes, I was for this, or no, I wasn't. So just pray about it. Mr. Irvin, I hope it don't rain. You keep talking to Irvin, but don't rain. But it is so good that it's just not an Alleghany thing or a coveting thing. You know, to join a parade in Clifton. You know, how about our gate? Right? We gotta keep the mentality that we're all in this together. This is a us thing. Don't ever let nobody say, you know, them and us. You know, it's not them and us, it's us all together. And once we do that, I think we're gonna be a lot better off. Add that, a little bit of God and prayers and things. There's one more thing I want to say. I want to thank y'all, staff, administration, bus drivers, maintenance, teachers, all of you. Okay, come down here sometime and see extra work that they do. Kim, ask her and Melinda how many times they go home before 8, 9 o'clock. Okay, I have to tell her all the time. Your kids are going to want to know who in the world you are. You know, but they're dedicated, all of it. And I thank you for that. I thank you for the care that you care for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fritz. Mr. Wright.
Thank you. I would like to thank everyone for being here. I would also like to thank Ms. Crawford, Ms. McNown for bringing the kids in to and I'd like to thank their parents because it's a big thing to get parents to bring kids in and be involved in their schooling of
think that is parental absenteeism in schooling is probably one of our second biggest challenges, ones that we can't control. My little guy Elio here, he didn't know he was doing algebra, but he was. And nobody said it, but it was definitely algebra that they were working on. And it was great to see them. Sheriff Moore, I appreciate him coming in with the SROs. I'd just like to echo what everyone else has said. The SROs are so important to our schools. Not only do they make our kids safe in schools, but I think they also make our community safer by being a go-to source for kids to tell what might be happening in their lives. You know, a lot of kids in our community these days don't have a stable home life, and that SRO officer is stable. It's somebody they can talk to, and somebody that they can trust. And I've met and talked to all of our SRO officers personally, and I can say they're easy to talk to, whether you're an adult or I'm sure they are as a kid too. But I think that's a great program. I think we're very blessed in this community to have the funding from the city and the county to be able to afford that opportunity. I know there are a lot of places that are bigger than us and more wealthy, and they don't have that. So I think it's a great thing that we have. Mr. Fisher was still here. I was going to remind him that he was in charge of Neighborhood Watch too, but he left. But he's always a great advocate for our children as well. Ms. Zervin, there's not enough good things I can say about you. From the first time I went to a Covington City Council meeting as a member of the Alleghany County School Board, someone who's in charge of finance or superintendent, you know, they could have easily thrown a wrench in this. Ms. Zervin worked together with Mr. Rice, the same way Melinda worked together with Ken. They worked together not knowing that they might be putting themselves out of a job. You know, and they were more concerned with the future of our community, the youth of our community, giving our kids opportunities, that they were willing to do that. And all the folks involved, and there are many, many folks, and a lot of folks don't get the recognition they deserve, but there were a lot of people that did that, that went above and beyond, not knowing whether they were working themselves out of a job or not. But I know Ms. Zervin had a huge workload of her regular daily duties, and then trying to figure out how to combine these school systems and teaching Mr. Rice all of Covington's things and Mr. Rice teaching Alec. I mean, it's so much work, and they took on a new computer program. They just financing software. They just did an amazing job, and we really commend you for everything that you've done to be a part of this and make things run smoothly. So I certainly do appreciate that. I appreciate Mr. Brigham being here and teach us a little history lesson. It's always nice to hear from one of our folks, and I can imagine that students in his class are very engaged. He has a very nice way of speaking to people and a very engaging way of teaching, and I certainly do appreciate that. As far as Mr. Urban, appreciate you coming down. If you don't mind just reminding people where the parade starts and what time it is.
They were take up at Dairy Queen and then line up in front of Jerry's place at 7 o'clock.
At 7 o'clock, and what day is that?
Wednesday.
Wednesday. Perfect. All right, well, I hope to see you there. I would also just like to give a shout out to one of our staff members, one of our teachers at the high school, Jerome Johnson, Romy, as most people know him. I've enjoyed watching several of our away football games that I couldn't make it to. He's there, he's in the crowd, he's got his little cell phone, I guess, set up on some sort of tripod. He's giving the play-by-play, and he's doing it all on his own. And he's doing it because he really loves our students and our athletic departments, and he's just been a great friend to our whole community. And he's not only that, but he's the voice of the Cougars. And it's funny, the other day I tuned in, and I was going in between, I was losing service, and I was trying to keep listening to the game, and I mean, it was like 400 to nothing, and I looked down, and I mean, it was great. Our kids were scoring touchdowns, and it wasn't just like all Des Jordan and Xavier Hazlett. It was like all these different kids getting involved, and we had a freshman buddy that is like this phenomenal athlete, and I was tuning into the Big Country 101 or the River or whatever, and going back to Romy, and one of them had better coverage of the halftime show, and it was great to see that we were up by 40 points and there were 130 people watching Romy's live feed. I mean, there weren't 130 people at a lot of our football games in the past, but there was a huge crowd. It's just great to see the community really get behind those kids. Thanks for everything you all do.
How do I follow that? I'm just going to shorten it by saying thanks everyone for their contributions to the meeting today. Special thanks to Mrs. Irvin for her dedication. And many years ago there was a book called Purpose Driven Life. My daughter and I did it together. And we encounter so many different problems throughout the course of a day, a week, a year. But I'm reminded that a life without problems is a life without purpose. And if we have any means to help our children with whatever capacity that you serve throughout the school system, I want to thank you for that, because it's always in their best interest that we help them as much as we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fitzpatrick. Mr. Avery.
Well, I would like to thank Mrs. Crawford and Ms. McNown and the students. I'm also thankful all I had to do was subtract 5 from 10, so thank you all for that. Mr. Graham and Mr. Ross, it's always nice to see what the government school can do and the opportunities it provides. Sheriff Moore and our county SRO, certainly do appreciate them being here, and as everybody has said, their presence is calming in a lot of cases, so we really do appreciate them being here. Mayor Irvin, I really do wish you luck with homecoming parade, and thank you to the town of Clifton Forge for everything you're doing. We really do appreciate that. Mrs. Irvin, I won't be sappy or anything except to say thank you very much for your service. Having worked with her on the Covington City side of things, Ms. Irvin's always done a wonderful job, so we certainly do appreciate it. Last but certainly not least, on Saturday I was privileged to be able to tee it up at Cliffview Golf Club for Callahan PTO's golf tournament. Now it is true, I almost never have a bad time on the golf course, so take that for what it's worth, but the tournament was very well organized, and I'm hoping, golf tournaments are always kind of dicey as how much money they raise, but it looked like they were making headway in getting new playground equipment purchased, so I hope we find out what they're able to do in the not too distant future. But I think it was just a wonderful example of what happens in our community when a group of people, and in this case mostly parents, come together and set their mind to a goal and they figure out how to do it. So very well run, very well organized, so I appreciate all of their efforts, and thanks to everybody for coming out tonight. That's all I have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Avery. Ms. Morgan, do you have anything you'd like to say?
I'd just like to say thank you to my peers for letting me join remotely tonight. One of the joys of having educators in your family is all the back to school love that it's brought, and the germs with it as well. So I've been down for the last week, but I believe I'm finally on the uphill swing. I also want to say thank you to Ms. Irvin for your many years of service and dedication. I've really enjoyed working with you the past couple of years, and wish you nothing but joy and happiness as you write the next chapter in your book. As for the SROs, as we were reminded in the last week, we are blessed to have them in every school, and I can't imagine our community without them. So I just want to thank them for what they do every single day, and wish everyone a happy and safe homecoming weekend. It is exciting as you drive through Clifton Forge and see the town painted blue. So thank you to all the businesses that have put forth such great effort in engaging our students and backing them, showing them the love the community has for them. And that's all I've got.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. Superintendent Halterman.
Yeah, I'm going to sound like I'm echoing a lot this evening. We want to thank everybody for coming out tonight, and it's always good to have local officials in the audience, our SROs in the audience. We had guests speaking, we had the kids, I believe teaching math, correct? Is that we'll all say they were helping us all with our math. Of course, Mr. Graham here from Governor's School, lots of really fun resolutions passed that are very appropriate for our community, but also I really do think we surprised Ms. Irvin, which was part of our goal tonight. So we appreciate her graciousness with that, and we're very, very, very thankful for her ongoing service. We want to continue to congratulate everybody for a great continued start to the school year. Lots of good achievements going on in athletics activities and in our classrooms. As a reminder, and I know it seems like we're saying this every meeting, but it's really important, everybody involved instructionally, particularly our teachers right now, are looking at a pretty high level of change with SOL testing, accreditation and accountability, pieces around the state. This is a time I often talk about the force of change, and this is a large amount of change that our teachers are processing, and we're very, very grateful for all their hard work. We also have something fun to show you tonight. A friend of ours, Mr. Fuzzy Gibson from the Clifton Forge area, gave us a gift that we would love to hang in our boardroom, and we just sort of wanted to show it to you tonight. It is a nice Alleghany Cougar's paw, but as you can see, it's got the component school divisions, including those historic school divisions. So really fun there. You've got a Covington Cougar, an Alleghany Mountaineer from the recent generation of Mountaineers, an Alleghany Colt, and a Clifton Forge Mountaineer. And it's a pretty neat present for us, so we look forward to hanging that up for you.
Thank you, Superintendent Hall. Well, after all that, it's hard to follow, but I as well would like to thank Mr. Graham and Mr. Ross for coming. I'd like to thank Mr. Brigham for his words of positivity. Mr. Irvin, thank you for coming out and reminding everybody, and thank you for all you do for our community. I also want to thank Sheriff Moore and all their SROs. We're so fortunate to have all of our great law enforcement in our schools, and help be a great shoulder for our children. And I just want to say I'm proud to be a part of this community. It's a great place to be. A lot of great things happen here. And Ms. Irvin, I just want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to learn from you, and it's been a great relationship, and I'm sure we'll see more of these, just not as much. And wish you the very best. Also, just want to thank all of y'all, all of our administrators, all of our bus drivers, teachers, groundskeepers. I mean, it takes everybody, you know. It's just like we're kind of like a wheel on a bicycle. You know, we lose a spoke, it starts running funny. And unfortunately, we got a couple spokes that are missing, and it's been that way for the past year or two, but hopefully we can get some more spokes and make it smooth out a little more, but it's riding pretty decent. I just thank everybody for coming.